So moved.
Second.
Okay, we'll approve by acclamation and then go ahead. Joe or Joel, did you have anything you wanted to say to start out tonight, or do you just want to get into the manager presentations?
No, I don't think so. I already covered kind of like the highlights yesterday, so I guess we could just get right into it.
Get into it. Okay. I guess that's you, Maddie.
Okay, just as a reminder, I'm Maddie. I'm the recreation manager, and wanted to give a little bit of background for those who are new to finance and those tuning in. The recreation department is funded through a member-approved special assessment for a 5-year period. That started May 31st, 2018, and it will expire May 31st, 2023. The special assessment covers operation and maintenance of the community center, our 2 outdoor seasonal pools, 20 parks, and about 10 miles of developed trails. Funds for the special assessment were locked in for the 5-year period at the time it was approved as part of that packet. So that increases by 3% each year. So for 2021, the monthly assessment for recreation will be $11.44 per month for developed properties and $8.04 for undeveloped. Like we talked about yesterday, we are budgeting at a 95% collections rate. And with that, we're budgeting for $391,029 of special assessment revenue, but we're also estimating an additional $37,512 in extra income from non-members using our facilities like the pools or renting spaces here in the community center.
Sorry, Maddie, what page are we on? It'd be great if we could start out by knowing what page.
You look at it here.
$27, is that what you guys have?
Yep, thank
For the
you.
community center. So these are all kind of separate. We have community center, and then there's the pools are somewhere else, and the parks are. So
They're not like quite grouped together. Yeah, so you
Yeah.
kind of have to go through.
go through each, right?
Yeah. So just to go back to what I was saying, we're estimating about an additional $37,512 in extra income from non-members. So we're working with a budget of $428,541 overall. So you'll see if you add up all 3 of those departments, it's community center, parks and trails, and pools. We are almost right at net zero. We're estimating we'll be like $79 over budget, something like that. And I'm sure we can make that up. So the goal was to be net zero. And like you pointed out, all of those departments are one pool of money, but in order to better track how we're spending that, we've broken it up into 3 separate budgets. So there's a community center one that's specifically for maintenance of this building and all the things that happen inside of this building. There's parks and trails. So that's for our 2 parks staff members, and then maintenance of our parks and trails, and then obviously pools and associated staff members for that. And that's just so that at the end of the special assessment, you can better see exactly how all of this, how each department is being funded, really, instead of looking at one big pool of money. So it's a bit more accurate. And just to go on that, since we're a special assessment, it's unique in that we need to capture the full cost of our operations. So things that are normally shared by departments like janitorial or trash or building maintenance, that all has to be incorporated in our budget to give a true depiction of what we are spending to operate these facilities. So just to highlight, we're not proposing any new staff or projects or increasing really the scope of what we're doing. It's going to be the same that we've been doing pre-COVID, obviously. I have FTE numbers if you'd like them, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have.
I have a question. I'm not familiar what the lease income for Barn 8 is. Is that for events or?
That is CTK, who is in the barn every Sunday. So that one that says lease is specifically our contract with them.
Okay. And then the gym and pool access card, is that for getting a new car, or what is that income?
Yeah, the one that says access card is specifically for those access cards that we make people in order to enter the pool or gym here. They cost us $4 a piece. Originally, they cost us $8, but Norm worked with Security Solutions to get that down since we issue a lot of access cards. Let's see, we issued 1,848 in 2018 and about 1,200 in 2019.
Is that something that you would be doing that amount every year? Because I mean, once you have an access card, are you gonna need another one? I mean, is that like,
Yeah, so we have new owners every year, obviously, and then a lot of people lose their cards over this winter time, and then they come back for the pool and they're like, I need a new one. So I do anticipate that number to go down, since you're right. Once you have one, you theoretically you'd keep it, since it's a permanent plastic kind of credit card.
and then are you predicting more instructional classes? Is that why your 2021 budget is for 6,000? Is that what you're thinking we would be getting as far as income?
Yeah, so we have a few really consistent instructors, like we have aerobics, but specifically David Herrera, who is our personal trainer, is working at expanding his program, and he's slowly been doing that over time and offering more classes and getting more clients. So that's kind of where that's coming from, is we anticipate those instructors to be staying. They've been here a long time, and we're only seeing more demand for classes.
And you mentioned that the fitness center income that's just for people who are non-residents that are paying to use the fitness. Is that what that is?
That's right. Yeah, we have some local community members who use the gym, but not a terrible amount.
And then the main pool income is nothing, or is that just not something
That's in pools. So previously all that stuff used to be bundled together, then we split it out. So that's why you see that GL, but really all that income's reflected in the pools budget.
The pool income is projected to it's double what it was in 2019.
Is that on a different page?
42.
Yes.
On page 41, starts on page 40, or yeah, 40.
42.
41.
Well, we predicted in 2020, 7,500 in main pool income. And we're predicting for 2021, 11,000. Let me look at the.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
2019 was pretty busy, and that was barely even 6,000 for actual.
Yeah, we have been, a lot of different private swim teams have been reaching out to us about renting the pool. So we were working on that and kind of factored that into Bellingham Bay swim teams interested in this year and beyond, kind of transitioning from Arnie Hanna to being here for the summertime.
Okay.
But the pool it's hard because it's seasonal. So when it rains, we don't get a whole lot of people, but
Actually, Maddie.
Yeah.
Like, I'll just jump in here. So I think where some of the confusion is like in 2019, if you looked at that 4513 line item that Trang brought up, you'll see in 2019 the $4,420 for pools, and then if you add that to that main quiet pool page, that 4513, now you have 5,443. So that's, it comes out to like 10,000. So that's pretty close to the 2021 budget of 11,000, just on that main and pool quiet pool income paid.
Oh, I see.
Joel, are you saying that it got put in two different GL lines or something in 2019?
It was put into the same GL line, but it's just a different department. So
I see.
like between rec and park. So if you just look at those, however, in rec for the 2021 budget, you'll see that main pool income has no revenue budgeted, which is fine because that revenue is budgeted in the pool section down there. But the 2019 actuals add up to, real close to that $11,000 line item.
Yeah, that would make more sense. So it doesn't look like it's double the amount. Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, I remember that as a discussion point last year that what we originally budgeted for the pool income, there was some, I can't remember if we moved it up, but there was some thought that for 2020 it was maybe a little bit low. So I do remember that our 2019 pool income was fairly significant.
And then the main pool is also separate, or the quiet pool? Why didn't we just put the pools together? Does that matter?
The pools are together in that pool budget.
Yeah,
Okay, because there's that 4516, where's the quiet pool income? I don't know.
Yeah, so some of that, the GLs were like recorded in community center for some reason, like in 2019 when they've been recorded in pools. So you kind of have to go through that 2019 actuals and look through each department.
that quiet pool income thing is literally the same sort of thing as with the main pool income. So if you look at the 2019 actuals for 4516 for pools and GL 4516 for rec centers, there's 182 in rec center and 402 in the main pools. So it's 500, $584 basically. And the 2021 budget is 500. So it's tracking fairly similarly.
Are we getting new uniforms for is that for the lifeguards or is that for just?
Yeah, that's for the lifeguards. It's important that they all wear consistently the same thing, and that's an appropriate outfit. It can do the job. So we chose to just go ahead and order those for our lifeguards.
Are these reusable every year, or are they just for, I mean, were they gonna have a monogram and all that so they can use it if we switch staff?
It's not sanitary to recycle swimsuits specifically, but if we bought like parkas or like something else, I think we could. But generally, we let them just keep it because they've been sweating in it all season.
Yeah,
You
no,
know.
I just thought they were like t-shirts or whatever. I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know if Joel already mentioned this, but if you look at the all department summary, then you've got all the main pool income summarized in one spot, and you can compare, that you can see the income for 2019, and then that makes sense with 2020 and 2021. In fact, 2020 looks like it's too low. So hopefully we can get open, but anyway, it makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't have any questions.
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
I do kind of have a question about the pool heater. I saw that on is that part of you guys' expense, or is that part of the, what's it called, that big category, CC?
In surf.
Yeah, is that, because I remember, I think it was last year when I attended the meeting, you guys were talking about the pool heater for the main pool, and it was, I'm assuming, approved. And I saw it on the project here. So does that mean that we are moving that, or we're not going to go forward with that?
We purchased that heater and it was installed and it's working great.
Okay.
So
Was there another heater then that's on that list?
we had a furnace break in the community center over the winter. But that's already been installed and is working as well.
Or is it maybe some of the quiet pool mechanics? Is that what's maybe listed under 2020?
I don't remember, but I remember seeing it says pool heater under the first draft, and then it got moved to, I don't know. But I mean, I guess that means there's no, I mean, it's taken care of, it's fine. I didn't know if we had any items that are gonna be pushed to a different year or something, because
I believe
it's listed on the first draft and now it's not longer listed, so it's kind of.
I believe both of the heaters have been replaced in the main pool and I believe quiet pool.
Okay.
We did ask for some equipment earlier in the year for lounge chairs, lifeguard chairs, things of that nature. So
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah.
in probably the first draft, once it got done, we just removed it, that showing that it was done and it was probably pushed out for its average lifespan.
Okay.
So we don't have any pending.
Projects is what I was wondering.
Yeah, I don't think we have anything pending for the pools as far as capital goes, do we? I mean, not for 2020.
We have the quiet pool mechanical, and that might be what you're seeing. That was for, it did include the heater, but it's for the the pump and the pool controller that controls the flow of the chemicals. But that's kind of pending because of COVID, and the health department is not offering any type of inspection or consultation at this time for pools. And that's really needed in order to kind of finish that job. So I think that was pushed out.
But that there's funds already budget for
Those
that.
were already approved. Yeah.
On the serve plan for 2020, like that's where you'll see some quiet pool, or you'll see some quiet full pump house equipment, and that's already been approved.
Yeah, so it's approved and those funds are obligated. So when we look at our, like the cash statements for the various reserve funds, it will already pull those out. That's kind of Joel goes over that every month. And so all the obligated funds, right, you've already accounted for in that.
Yeah.
Even if we haven't spent it yet, we consider it, if it's been approved, we consider it obligated already.
We consider it almost like the cash is just gone.
Yeah. We didn't go over anything in parks specifically. I didn't have any questions about it, but was there anything you wanted to say specifically about parks or trails, Maddie, or is it pretty much just what we've been doing?
Yeah, we have been busy. We've gotten quite a few park renovations done in the time that the special assessment started. So we've renovated Huckleberry Park, Maple Leaf Park, Gate 5 Park. We just finished the community center about right when COVID started, which is, you know, extremely frustrating. And we are planning on doing a small renovation of Cascade this summer. There's a small swing set up there, so we're going to do the same thing, put down proper fall material and a border, then a new swing set. So that's the main things. And they've been working really hard on our trails. They've been focusing on some of our most frequently used trails like Lake Louise. I got a ton of gravel recently, and it's looking really good. And they redid Strawberry Falls and the Lake Louise Road, and they're working on Area Y. And then they always do the AM, PM, and some of those other regular ones.
I think we've been on all of them during this lockdown, me and my kids, and they're all great. They love them all. It's pretty fun.
Good. Yeah, we
Okay,
just mapped all of our trails, and that's all on the recreation subpage now. If you go to our website, so you can actually get like driving directions to where they start. That was a big project we were able to finish.
So is the one at the Barn 8, is that the last one that we are redoing, or is there more lined up this year?
So the last one for 2020 will be Cascade. It's a smaller park. That community center one was actually funded through a capital approval by the board, which is why we were able to get an extra one in 2020, because the budget only allows for one park renovation a year. So since we got that capital money for the community center, we were able to get 2 in 2020.
And that is in stage 3 for opening, or?
That's the plan right now.
Is that including the pool then?
We are having a planning meeting tomorrow to talk about the pools, but pools are allowed to reopen in phase 3, but there's very specific requirements for reopening that are high.
And the same with the fitness center, all in stage 3?
They're allowed in stage 3, but there's very specific like capacity levels. I think there's a maximum of 50 people who can congregate at one time, but I know Norm can give more info as well as Joe.
Frank, we are going to have a meeting tomorrow. We're going to do everything we can to get the pools as well as the fitness center opened under phase 3. And we will follow the guidelines as closely as we can. Originally, we were hoping to have the health department come out and do some work with us. Unfortunately, they are all being tied up with contact monitoring and following. So we're going to put the plan together, which is something we've done all year with this, and end up sending it to Unified Command as well as Public Health for their rubber stamp to change what we need to change. So just to let everybody know, we've written a lot of our own policies here, sent them up. Unified Command and the people up in the county have taken some of our recommendations and used them going forward. So we get to help them write their stuff as well.
Good job. Anything else?
That's all I got.
Moving
Right.
along.
Hey,
All
right.
Hold
I've
on.
got common costs.
Right.
I think we've all met, but I'm Lisa Armstrong, the HR and Administrative Services Manager. And I'm going to apologize initially for the lack of eye contact because my camera is right here, but you're over here. So I'm going to be looking over here at you. So sorry about that. I'm not sure why my laptop is acting up. Oh, so with common costs, so we're on page 13. Actually, page 12, the first couple pages in your budget. There are no increases across common costs. It's all flat, except the Views is increasing their retainer by $1,200. But since we've been consistently under budget for at least that much over the years, we just don't feel a need to increase that budget because we won't exceed it, even with their increased cost. But the common cost budget remains completely flat. So skipping, unless you have questions, you have any questions about those items?
At the View.
The
Well,
View-
we do have the, with common costs, that's where our general insurance is, D&O, liability, umbrellas and all that. So that does have a 15% increase. Again, that was just an assumption they gave to us. And that may not even happen, but that was a number they had given us. So we're hoping, and we will work on everything to get that under that number. So
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed that, Joe. It's reflected in the admin portion as well. But this is our property directors and officers, all the other insurance that we're required to have. And every year I reach out to our brokers and ask them to look in their crystal ball based on what they know already, which is not a lot this time of year, to find out what their premium increases are expected to be. And year after year, 15% has been estimated. We've underrun it every year, except last year it went to 16%. I've heard, she's told me stories about like personal friends of theirs, they have to tell them they're having a 36% increase. We've not seen that happen. We don't anticipate it to happen. 15% is actually we're not expecting to exceed that.
And when does it actually go into, like, when will we know the final numbers? Is that in January?
It's in November usually.
Okay.
We do
So
our renewals. But the fact is we have had no experiences. We have had no claims. There's not been a property claim or a D&O claim. There's been nothing that an insurer would run from us. So it's looking pretty stable and pretty steady. So I think this assumption is accurate as far as it being protective and conservative, but it's not anything I think we're going to exceed.
our run losses are over the last few years have been pretty good. So I can't really see. I mean, that's what they look at as an insurance company. They look at your run loss report. And if you have a lot of stuff, you're going to go up. If you don't, you generally can negotiate staying flat. So.
What line item is this?
It is
Line 5400, is that right?
on page 13.
Insurance.
Got it. When's the last time we had a different broker quote our insurance?
Oh, I think he's been our broker for 27 years. It's Hub, and they're pretty much the only show in town, but they go out, they put us out to market every single year, and they present us to all kinds of carriers, not just our current one. And I mean, he's got a great sense of humor. There's people that we're so big that we get insurers that just like, they're just not that into you. They won't insure you. They just won't, because we have too many amenities. We have too many people. But we do have different insurance carriers as the years go on, but we've had one single broker that knows us so well, and they know what we can do and what we can't do. And they know the carriers to reach out to that can give us the best premiums possible based on our experience ratio. I mean, we do operate conservatively. If we have a risk exposure that's a low occurrence and low cost, we're going to pay for it ourselves. Meaning if, you know, a tree falls on a neighbor and they, you know, it dings their bumper and it's our fault, we're going to pay that. We're not going to put a claim in for that. If we have things that are low occurrence, but super high impact, like say, a flood or something like that, that's a different story. We very carefully weigh the options between, what if we're not going to insure something that costs less than our deductible, things like that.
I guess it doesn't, from my experience, it doesn't hurt to shop every once in a while and to be with the same broker for 28 years. I mean, your policy, you've got the policy, you've got all the information, you find somebody else and just give them a go at it. I mean, I don't know the harm.
I'm not objecting to that. It's, in this particular incident, as I said, they know us so well that I know that they fight to get us the best carriers and the best premiums possible. So there just hasn't been a reason to. But if
there might be markets, they don't have access to every single carrier that's out there. No,
I'm not disagreeing. Obviously, if that's something that Joe wants to explore, that's what we'll do.
It's just a recommendation.
Sure.
That's what I would do if it hadn't been out to market to a different broker in 28 years. But
Hub's a pretty big organization. It's as best as I can tell. And I'm involved in some another business that uses them as well, and they've been pretty aggressive about finding the best deals out there.
I worked for a company probably 15 years ago here in Bellingham that used Unity Group, which was on Unity Street, and it's the same company. They were absorbed by Hub, so they're kind of a beast when it comes to their resources. But again, I am not opposed at all to seeking other avenues just to see what's out there.
If nothing else, I mean, I've been through this before, right? And so that doesn't mean that I'm, that works for Sudden Valley, but you get another set of eyes on your policy, and there might be a couple things that, a person's missed. We've got a pretty expansive policy, and it wouldn't even be abnormal for someone to maybe miss the thing here or there. And so that would be another potential benefit from it.
Colin, who do you guys use at Woods?
Well, we've switched brokers 3 times in the last 10 years. Once because we didn't have proper coverage, and we found that out when we got it audited by someone else. And the other time we got a different broker that has access to a carrier that our broker didn't have access to. So
okay, it's worth a look.
But who are you using right now?
I'll email you and let you know. I don't want to,
Gonna plug names?
No, and I don't want to plug business. I have no interest in plugging business, but
it's okay. Whatever is helpful. We're always willing to look at improvement.
So Lisa, I have a question.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is the right time to ask that, or if it's a different committee.
You're behind my laptop, so you're extra like this. Okay, there you are.
Okay, so in regards to the advertisement income, I'm assuming that's from businesses buying ads for the view?
For the views, it's the classified ads. It's not very significant.
Right, and then the cost for us as far as postage and I'm assuming the newsletter service, is that the view or is that the electronic info that you guys send out?
That's the views.
Okay, so the cost of the view itself is like double the amount of the interest. Is that, the income?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And
has anyone ever considered removing the view?
You know what? It comes up all the time. People don't want the newspaper in their box. They get it electronically, but unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your opinion, it's in the bylaws. So we must provide.
We have to have it.
Have to have it. So unless that is voted to change, then we're going to have to continue to absorb that cost.
So no one has presented to the board saying, can we eliminate this cost and maybe try to inform our members a different way that doesn't?
Well, I've only been here for 5 years, so I can only speak to what I've experienced. But I know that year after year it comes up, they only want electronic copies. And so what we've done is there's been a way created for people to opt out of having it mailed to their homes, but they still print the same amount of views.
Right, it doesn't matter if they opt out because
they're still printing them. Exactly.
But still eliminated altogether.
Providing them, sorry.
No, go ahead.
providing them electronically, of course, has been an encouragement to our people to not want to have them delivered. But until someone passes a measure to remove all paper copies of the views, you're going to get people that will object to that. Because
Well, for 60,000, I mean,
Yeah.
they can pick
But
up
I'm-
a copy at the office if they want.
but it's come up over and over again. Yes, the answer is it's come up over and over again.
All right, Karen, put that on
Yeah,
the board.
I think this falls to the communications committee to make
Okay.
sure that we are accurate, we are appropriately communicating with all of our members. So I would take a recommendation from them if they have one. And I know it's been looked at before. In fact, a couple years ago, maybe 3-4 years ago, Leslie might remember better, they made some changes to how we deliver the views that saved us quite a bit of money. So
You're right. That was the communications committee that did that.
yeah, this isn't something that I, as a board member or even on a finance committee, would necessarily drive, but I would support recommendations coming from the communications committee if they wanted to put something
I will
forward.
send an email out to them. That's all.
Okay,
I like
anything?
I like your train of thought. I've brought this up a couple times. I mean, the paper and time and energies and efforts that everybody's putting into books and stuff, day and age everything should be electronic.
Or on our website, like you guys have already. So it's not
Right.
like it's only a one source for
Right.
them to get the information. Right now, I'm using it as a fire starter. That's what my husband says. I'm like, that's a really expensive fire starter, honey.
Yes, it is.
That's all I use that for after I read it, of course, but it seems that, oh, wow. Anyway,
Agreed. I just don't want to step on toes. I think it falls under the realm of communications, and it's up to them to decide how we best communicate with the community. And so if that's something they want to put forward, I would support it, but it's not something that I am looking to step on toes in that regard.
no, I know. It's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the common cost? Can we move on to operations?
Sorry, I said go ahead.
Oh.
Yeah, different page, or is that the next one?
So there's nothing alarming in the operations. This is on page 36. We're not asking for any increases, certainly not, well, sorry, that's not entirely true. We're not asking for any additional staff, and our budget for all the line items, except for a few, remain unchanged. They're at 0%. However, we did decrease, and if you look at page 37 at item 5325 at the top of the page, recruiting expenses. We engaged a company in 2019 to assist with payroll benchmarking. And it was agreed to by the board and also by finance that was a good investment because our current staff levels were not appropriate to market. They were quite a bit under. We just needed an actual true benchmarking of what we should be paying people. We're still not at the point where everyone's at the true market, but we made an improvement. But it's an expensive program. And since we are not hiring any new individuals this next year, and we're not planning on any significant increases in salary, we went ahead and disengaged with that service. And so we've been able to reduce the budget for recruiting expenses by 73%. Those recruiting expenses, if you're wondering, that includes Craigslist ads, it includes pre-employment drug screening. That has been lowered. But other than that, there's nothing significantly changed. I will address, because this looks scary, and it's under payroll and benefits. If you look at payroll taxes under 5335, you're showing a 23.62% increase, and that's not correct. It's only 10%. So Joel, you're right there. So if you want to kind of address what's going on with that one, that would be awesome. But you're muted.
Yeah, essentially what's going on with this is in 2020, when the budget was inputted into the budget software. So basically in 2020, Like when you look into the 2020 budget, you'll see payroll taxes. It says 26,541, and then payroll benefits 28,186. Those numbers essentially should have just been flipped around. They're just sitting on different line items back during the 2020 budget cycle when it was put in, which affects these percentages.
And again, with payroll benefits, I was speaking to our broker, and I have two different individuals that I work with. The first one, of course, is our property D&O, all the things that we're required to have. And then a secondary broker that we work with is just for employee benefits for medical and dental. And they also usually anticipate a 15% increase, and we've never exceeded that. And usually we come in quite a bit lower, like 6 or 7%. But because of the uncertainty of the economy, we just felt like it was more fiscally responsible to go ahead and add that 15% as an estimate, hoping, of course, that we'll stay under that. But it's not the 35.29% that you're seeing on your page.
Lisa, I have a question.
Sure.
The question, I'm trying to understand the 6% increase in salaries versus the 3%.
3%. That's reflected because we did make some salary adjustments last year. And Joel, you kind of explained it to me because I had the same confusion, because I know that we're not trying to increase salaries by 6% next year. But because some salaries were increased during the last year based on this benchmarking and market value. And we also had the funds in order to accomplish that. That percentage is higher than, I'm having a hard time explaining it. Joel, can you help me here with this?
Sure. Yeah.
Only said 3%, and he explained to me why it says 6, and it made sense at the time, but I'm hoping he can kind of clarify it for all of us.
Yeah, actually, so this is another one here in the 2021 budget in terms of the salaries number. So this is where slight change is made to it to correct it. That didn't make it into the print copy of the thing that showed up in your finance packet. But basically under the 2021 budget, that number will actually be 358,897, which actually, that percentage is really it's like 4.46% or so. Once that number, that correction will make it into the board's version of it. But it's just too late for it to get into this one at this point.
Are you talking about the 2019 actual numbers, or are you talking about?
No, I'm just talking about the 2021 budget numbers. So how this budget, so where it says 365,095 for 2021 budget for salaries. So that number is 358,897, so that percentage then drops to 4.46% at that point. And that correction will actually, you'll see that correction in the board's version of it. But how all of these 3% are put in is just, it's basically kind of like what I did with insurance and what I did with benefits. I looked at exactly what the rates were at the time and then tacked on 3% to that. And so like with insurance, I looked at all insurance documents, like how even insurance documents that ran through, say, like midway through 2021, it didn't get I didn't just take the 2020 number and tack on 15%. I ran it through whatever, let's just say an insurance document expired in June 2021, then it would just be July through December, that portion of it that would take the 15%. And same thing with healthcare benefits. What the current rates are that we have right now, then 15% gets tacked on to that. So it's not just the 2020 budget, 15%, it's what we're currently paying plus 15%.
I think Lori has a question.
I do. So my question would be, is it like in our bylaws or whatever that every year there's an automatic increase of like 3% for the wages, or is that something that membership votes on? And with like the healthcare, is it written somewhere that healthcare is paid at 100%, or is it like a cap? And then if it goes over that, then it's up to the employees to kick in a portion of their healthcare insurance. Like I don't know if it's written in stone, the increases and stuff. Maybe somebody can explain that a little bit better.
I can if it's okay if I jump in on this one, Joe. There have been many, many years where there's been no increases in salary whatsoever. And before the COVID, our unemployment rate was at an absolute record low. And to retain employees, it was essential to be able to provide some, even if it's just 1% or 2%, just something that we could offer our employees. And it's been budgeted and voted upon. It's not anything that people are trying to just do without permission, and it's certainly not in the bylaws. So, but it's been proven, through the budgeting process that we can't afford to offer that to ensure that we don't have the turnover. It's not guaranteed by any stretch of the imagination. The way that Joe handles this is he tells every department manager how much they've got, and they distribute it by merit and also by cost of living. It's very calculated. It's not you get this money no matter what. And it's not a guarantee. It's not in the bylaws. It's something that can be discussed and changed if needed. But given the time that we're living in, I think that most of us feel pretty certain that this is a good thing for our staff. That said, there's no significant increases scheduled or considered for next year.
So you're saying in 2021, you guys aren't expecting to have an increase in your wages?
No, just nothing significant. We would like, this is our request. This is why this is coming to you for discussion, to be able to have that option, especially as people come back from, because we've been so blessed to be able to continue to employ our staff. So many of them have spouses that are not employed. They are suffering. Even though they are employed, they're still underwater and they're having a hard time. We're just trying to do the very best that we can without injuring or harming our budget.
Lisa, can I ask a question on that cost of living? The cost of living, way it's stated in here, appears that it looks like everybody's going to get a 3% cost of living. But what Joe says, it's basically up to the managers that they can give a salary increase from 0 to 3%, or can they give more to one person than the other, exceeding 4%?
They have, each manager will have an X amount of money to work within their department. It'll be merit, most of it is merit based. If someone wants to give them 3.5% and somebody 2.5% based off of merit, that's based off of their hard work and what they deem. They only have X to work within their department.
So is it in reality classified as cost of living, or is it just a merit-based increase?
Well, it's 3%. It's more based, it's cost of living merit based. So it's 3% is what we're asking. And if you remember last year, I had to pull $85,000 off the table for staff to make the budget work. The last thing I think you really want to do is start banging the backs of your staff because you feel like you can.
Well, I'm not disputing the 3%. I just wanted to get clarification on it's a flexible range that the managers have in determining what salaries each individual is going to get, basically.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good clarification to make. It's not an automatic. This is a budget and it's budgeted on a 3%, which is kind of an average cost of living number, but the actual salary increases will be based on merit and funds available and all of those different things. So this is just kind of a benchmark for budgeting. I also, just from my experience in the past, sometimes you find out that having to replace, well, not sometimes, most of the time, having to replace employees ends up being more expensive than being able to keep them. And so I know this is always talked about, salaries is always talked about in it. And payroll is our most expensive operations line item. But we have to keep in mind, maybe it's not, maybe I'm saying it wrong, but we have to keep in mind that sometimes the savings in payroll you end up paying for in other places, like recruiting expenses and loss of productivity and just a few other things. I think Jacob mentioned the other day buying new uniforms. When we get new people, we have to buy them new uniforms. And so there's some other expenses that you just might not think of. And so Anyway,
It costs $3,156 to replace a minimum wage employee. I mean, there's a lot of data out there that's a minimum wage. So you get up to the management level and people are leaving, it's going to cost us a lot more than that. So an increase of that size, I mean, that's not to say just that the 50-cent raise is going to keep an employee. It might. Just the gesture of an increase in this day and age is enough to they stick around because they were treated as though they mattered.
Bruce, can I just throw something else at from maintenance side? Last year, we lost 3 of our permanent employees. We had just 1 permanent employee, and boy, did we have problems getting those other 3 brought up to speed. We even had problems during the winter, but we were able to get through it. If you lose employees, you lose what I call historical knowledge and experience in Sudden Valley. So that's another item to look at besides just the monetary part of it.
Lisa, I have a question regarding that too. Where are we? You made a comment saying that we still have not completely elevated or increased the salaries based on the recommendations from that study or the comparisons in that study. What kind of, I don't know that you would necessarily want to tell me the specific jobs because that might disclose.
Right. I can tell you that 5 years ago, we had people that were 49% below market. I mean, just ridiculously underpaid. And then people that were kind of at the 25 percentile. And over the years, we've been able to the goal has been to get people to at least the 50 percentile. And, most companies hopefully would do better than that, but it's been a great improvement. But we're not going to hit 100%. And people know this. I mean, coming in here, this is a wonderful place to work. I mean, the staff are just amazing, and it's really a fabulous place to work. And people choose that, working with people that they respect and trust, and over a couple bucks more. And so that's where we win, is when we try so hard to create a culture that makes people want to stay, even if they could make more money elsewhere.
Thank you.
Hey, Lisa, I have a question just for my info. Is the 5205 item number event charges, is that for the 4th of July events?
Where's that? I'm sorry.
It's the 5205 under administrative.
What page?
Charges. Is that for those?
I'm sorry, what page are you on?
36.
Okay, thank you. 5205. Yes, and that's probably something else I want to bring up, is that I'm not sure that it matters for 2020, but because of the COVID, we're not spending money. I mean, we canceled all the events. So all the money in our events budget for this year is not going to get spent. And same with office supplies, for heaven's sake. I mean, there was no one in the office for 2.5 months. We are so underspending what we normally spend on things like that. And the list goes on, and it's the only fortunate side effect of having something like this happen, but we're just not spending the money.
So should we budget for 2021 that same amount then?
I'm hoping that we get to have the 4th of July, and we get to have a summer event, and we get to have a fishing derby. That would be the ideal. It would be wonderful if we could get back to all that.
Any other questions for Lisa? All right, I think it's Joel now, accounting.
Okay, so for accounting, obviously this is all right, so I guess we can just go to the next section. But
Page 19.
Oh, excuse me, yeah, page 1920. The only increases to accounting are just the the cross-the-board increases that we've discussed with the other departments. So what would affect accounting is just basically just an increase to the salary section. And other than that, everything is just kept baseline the same as in the 2020 budget. The good thing about his accounting is we don't have as many line items as most of the other departments. So if you have any questions on any of these items.
I do. On the NSF fees, so that's for people who are writing bad checks to us.
That's correct.
What is our fee that we tack on to, so we get that fee back from the person, but then do we attach another fee to that? So if they wrote us an NSF check, they have to replace that fee plus an additional amount, or do they just cover what we got charged?
No, we charge them $27 for an NSF fee. And we get charged $10 a piece from the bank.
Okay. So then we're gaining $17 in that. We're getting
That's
our
right.
$10 back
Yeah.
plus 17.
Yeah,
Okay,
plus that's correct. Yes.
that was my question.
Yeah.
Joe, how come the item number 4240 for title and recording fee, why is that so much lower than the previous years?
Well, like what number are you looking at? Are you looking at 2019 versus another number, or?
Well, I'm looking at then 2016 was 39,000, 2017 actual was 40, 2018, you know, going on. But then we budget ours for 2021 at 30.
So this number is from the, basically, this is that transfer fee that the buyers are charged for this thing. So it's $125 per property. That the $125 section of it hits this line item right here in operations. And then that 1/4% goes into the capital part of it. But in terms of, for budgeting this in 30,000 for 2021, of course, this is a little more of a kind of a crapshoot, I guess you could say, because this solely relies on how many properties are sold during the year.
But it seems like all the trend from the previous 4 years that we've hit more than 30. So when we want to budget it for close to those instead of
Not in 2019, we didn't.
2019, we get 39.
Are you looking at, am I looking at the wrong thing? 4240?
4240 title, and am I looking at the right date? Let's say Monday. Yeah, making sure I didn't look at the Tuesday.
2019 is 26,000.
2019 is 39,000.
Yeah, I have 39,000.
Yeah.
We must be looking at the old one.
What do you look?
I mean, yeah, you and I must be looking at the old one.
Oh, yeah, you're looking at the old one.
I like the paper. Paper's
The
sweet.
first draft.
Oh wait, I gotta grab the views. It's right here. Just a second. I want to show you something.
We're projected to do 29,600 this year. I'll be glad to change anything if anybody on this panel can look in a crystal ball and tell me how many homes we're going to sell.
No, I mean, I'm just assuming if we're looking at trend and we're basing everything so far in the budget on what we see every year since going from 2016 has been around 39,000 or over, and we're budgeting, 2021 at 30, which is
Someday it's gonna drop to like 10 when you're, I mean, the real estate market's been happening, so it just seems good to budget on the.
so you want to under budget that income. Is that what you're saying, Colin?
Yes, please.
This is one of those fees that you don't know what you're going to be getting for it. And so you do budget conservatively. Now, these numbers are actuals. You don't know what the budget was for that year. You maybe
That's true.
have gotten, more, and you always want to budget conservatively. And if you bring in more, that's great.
It's just surplus. Okay.
And it's the same thing with housing starts. We have no idea how many housing starts we're going to have next year. I mean, last year in the budget, they wanted us to raise it up through the roof. I don't have that crystal ball. I don't think anybody does. I mean, I can put that number up there to 40,000, Trang, and if we only get 20, I'm dead in the water with you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I may have to get that number from you, Joel, for the 4240, what you budget, just for my own curiosity. Because I like to know what you guys budget and what it was over.
I'm
It's
looking
one
in
of
my
those-
crystal ball,
Yeah.
and as the county assessor,
I mean, I used to work in forecasting in Ken, and I like the percentage as far as,
Yeah.
that's always been fascinating to me.
So
So
real estate
I'll
market-
email you, Joel, for the 4240 2016 and on budget.
So Lori, what do you have to say?
I
the
wanna hear
housing
it.
market is still really hot. Houses are still being sold very fast in Sudden Valley. Sudden Valley is a hot market because it's cheaper to live out here.
And it's
But I agree what Leslie says. It's nice to be a little bit more conservative because, we're just starting to see the effects of COVID, and that's really going to hit next year when people start losing jobs and whatnot. So while it's hot right now, and it's still hot right now, it may not be that way next year. So it's good to be conservative, like Leslie says.
Through ups and downs in the real estate market, and that seems to be one of the first things to get pounded on in a downturn.
It's true.
I also think it's good to be conservative on things that you have no control over. I'm happy to let Brian get some, stretch goals in golf and kind of hold him to the fire on that, but things where we have no control over it whatsoever, those are things that I tend to be more conservative with.
Did you say you're holding me to the fire?
I'm going to.
10%, remember, Brian?
Yeah.
Gonna be aggressive with that.
I'm on it.
Good. I have full faith in you, Brian.
I just need, if I could control weather, man.
Over mistake, Brian.
Yeah.
Okay. Lori, thanks for bringing in that extra little bit of knowledge and expertise you have on the accounting. I think that's going to be real helpful for us as we kind of navigate through this whole COVID thing. Kind of having a pulse on that, I think, is going to be very helpful. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Any more accounting? I don't know, Joel, that seemed pretty easy for you. All right. Security, ACC, and hazard trees. Norm, is that you?
That would be me, and good evening to everybody. Security ACC budgets, if you'll turn to page 43 through 45 of your binder or handout, you'll notice that it is essentially flat, and it's the same budget that we were working on this year, and that is the numbers we're submitting for next year. With that stated, one of the things I do want to kind of touch on this is, and Joe brought it up on the new construction income side of things. We're only looking for a budgeted number of 10 starts, which is what we had last year. That is going to be greatly impacted by the changes in the market, dictated by the changes at the gubernatorial level with the COVID virus inspections, requirements from the state going forward, and other sector impacts such as energy costs. If you're paying attention to that, you will notice that we are currently at a surplus of several billion barrels of oil, which means that the market's going to go up and down, and that affects all of our sectors. So we budget conservatively for that income, and did that last year, even though there was great pressure put on us at the board level to increase that as a revenue generation source. But hindsight being perfect vision, it was probably a good idea that we did not, based on what we're going through now. So,
hey, Norm, did you just say that Sudden Valley has several billion barrels of oil?
just at your house, Colin.
Yeah, that's great.
Possibly at Turf Care, but other than that, no. No, it's on the world market.
Okay.
Dang.
If it was, then I think our salary numbers would be a lot better. Again, common cost, same increases that have been noted by my compatriots about cost of living, insurance, etc. You'll look through your pages in 40, like I said, 43 and 45. You'll notice that there's a lot of 0%. There is one that shows a little bit of a decrease in the hazardous trees program, and that's based on the actual numbers from 2019, which I had Joel pull a GL report for me to verify. We budgeted the number to hit that target, and we were below that. So, so we'll have sufficient funds in that, and what is not utilized in operations, we can always look at increasing that. So with that, also the Pacific Security contract is in this as well, and there's no considered changes of a provider. We went through a wage increase with them last year, what they charge us. So there's no indications at this point that they're going to ask for any more money for that contract. So with that, I would open the floor up for discussions.
That was the question. One of the questions that I had, Norm, was what is the status of our contract with the security group, whatever they're called? I can't remember their name.
Pacific Security Services.
Thank you.
Currently, that contract is in effect for the remainder of this year. We usually go up for a discussion, and it doesn't automatically evergreen if that was a concern. But we do have a discussion with them yearly as to the previous for the next service year coming up. Currently, that won't probably occur till after we get into phase 3 right now. With that, they are like every other provider, security services, they're strapped pretty tight for what they're doing. So that includes their senior staff. So it's on the radar.
So we don't have a multi-year contract.
We have a 30-day walk away with them at any point to terminate it.
Okay.
Based on performance criteria on the contract. Okay.
And is there any other competitor in the marketplace in Whatcom County?
Well, there are, but having come out of that business and back here in my second tenure, I can tell you that your mid-size level companies like Pacific aren't really in existence that much anymore. They've been gobbled up by your larger companies like Securitas, G4, US GuardSmart, and those things. And many of them, although they will ask you or tell you that they do offer home community policing, which is what this contract essentially is, you get into a negotiation with them, and their charges typically are much higher for them. There are other providers. There's also the option to look at returning it back to an internal model, as well as we had before with proper training. Those options are there, but currently right now, with everything happening globally and regionally, we are going to continue the course at this junction.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Norm, I have questions about the hazardous trees. And again, if you look back 2016 to 2019, the numbers are quite a bit lower, but those are actuals.
Yes.
And I believe that the budget for those years was actually so much less that that's all that they could spend. Now, if you're looking at the budget for 2020 and the projected, that's up, $60,000 range. And are we looking at not doing as much work with the hazardous trees in 21, pulling it back to 55?
Well, the scope of work will be dictated by the ranking that the ACC coordinator keeps on the hazardous trees that they've assessed. Currently, there's a couple of factors in play with that. Will the work continue? Yes. Will we try to spend up to budget? Yes. But the other part of it is too, we're also working with relationships with both the county with Whatcom Conservation as well as DNR to look at some shared cooperative work that could be done, hopefully on their dime, but as well as possibly grant opportunities that may be available under the wildfire protection concerns that are currently going. Like I said, it's a one-person office right now with the coordinator. So she works through her tree ranking as best she can to get that scope of work contracted out, because much of it is contracted out. And a lot of that, she's at the mercy of the availability of some of those contractors. So yeah, we will be working towards spending toward budget. As you alluded to in previous years, yes, it was funded much lower, but there was a continuous cycle of going back to UDR to fund work. And we're trying to avoid that scenario because UDR should not be used as a rainy day fund for this stuff.
Oh, exactly. And that's why I really was interested in moving that number up to $60,000 last year, because I think that we've got to get a realistic number in there. We can't just count on, backfilling from UDR all the time.
And that is true. And the other aspect of it is some of these assessments with the relationships that I talked about, in particular DNR and the forester, we need a good idea as to the amount of the hazardous trees and diseased forests we have in here, not only for safety mitigation for wildland fire, but for health of the forest. The plan that was done by Tom Hansen over a decade ago is not current. The forest, much like a person, is aged. And so these assessments that we are working cooperatively once we can move forward to get done will give us a better idea just how deep problem is and what it will cost long term. It could theoretically end up as a long range planning issue if it's a huge chunk. We just are not sure because we need to have another evaluation done to make sure we're capturing the breadth, the scope, and the depth of this issue.
Okay.
And Leslie, just as a reminder, I got really schooled very well by Joel last night about the projected is not really a forecast. It's a artificial number. So I don't think we can.
No, I understand that. And that's what I was looking at. If you're just going to divide what you've done by, 12, et cetera, et cetera. This is all a seasonal number too. So I'm sure that the 67 is not a real number, but it looks like they are spending significantly this year, as they should.
I agree. This is an urban forest, and it needs to be both looked at from, like I said, we want to avoid Paradise, California, frankly.
Leslie, we will address all the hazardous trees based off of rank and get those down. And like Norm said, we're trying to get some good partnerships out here to hopefully where we can get some other funds from other people to help us out. So
Yeah. That's a great strategy. So thanks for doing that.
I have 2 questions. Number one, do we have plans to have someone come out and do the forest evaluation again? Is that on the radar coming up, or?
As soon as those agencies is available, I can tell you right now that all the wildland fire planning has been tabled till 2021, both by the county and DNR because of the virus impact to their agencies. A lot of their agencies are providing support in other areas. So it is on the agenda to do, but it is going to be dependent on availability of the partner agencies.
Okay. And then what is our goal for hazard tree removal? Like what ranking? Is it 8? Is it 6? What are we trying to do?
Trying to hit the top tier, which starts at about 12 up there. And there's a significant amount of those. I have the log of what the ACC coordinator keeps, and I can forward that out as a separate cover so you can see what that looks like. It's also colorized to show the high red being the highest concern. Those are the ones that will receive the immediate attention. However, with that said, if we come across one common property that's in significant threat of impacting a residence or road or infrastructure, that jumps to the top of the list. So some of that is subject to, fix on failure.
So we're just trying to get to all the 12s right now?
Trying to get to the highest ranking we can.
Just work it down. Start at 12 and work down.
Yeah, Jacob being one of our tree people can tell you that sometimes you're not real sure as to when a tree is going to decide it's no longer a 6, but a 13 or a 12. So it can happen.
Okay, and Jamie just sent us a note that says there's comments from the ACC coordinator on the the hazard tree log, I think, which probably gives some more context.
It would, but I did bring that up as well.
Okay.
So I guess question, how much would you like to have available for hazard trees? It sounds like you're keeping trees around that you would prefer to not have around and are kind of dangerous.
Well, without an in-depth study of how deep the problem was, I couldn't tell you. I've talked to other counterparts that actually have, arborists on staff and have the ability to remove the more difficult actors per se. So it could run the range up to, having a division to do that. I couldn't really give you an adequate answer as to what a budgetary number would look like until we know how deep the problem is.
But at the current budget level, you don't feel like we're leaving a bunch of trees around that are probably dangerous.
I feel that we're addressing what we can with what we have, but is that a possibility you described a bit potential? Yes, it is. It's a risk potential.
Sounds like we need better information. Okay, and then my other question is, why do we have ACC and security as one department? They don't seem to have anything in common, except you, Norm.
Okay, and I'm pretty common, that's for sure. So I would, that is the structure that was set up when I was hired in 2014, as far as where the ACC, as you may recall, Leslie, and those that have been here a while, we used to have a separate division called CES that did much of these same functions. And as associate came in, the department waned and grew and kind of bounced around. And then when it was restructured under the managing director model, it went under security. So it's one of those things that the GM would have to look at as an organizational issue, but that's kind of where it sits right now.
Well, it just seems like ACC does very specific things, has very specific responsibilities, and it would be nice to just know what the department costs us. Not that it matters if it's, how much money it's losing or whatever, but it just seems to commingle that with security. It'd be nice to know what security costs and what ACC costs.
The commonality that I see between the two is that security, you're looking at enforcement for ACC. And other than that, I don't know.
Well, safety. I mean, tree hazards and securities are both for safety. So I can see where
that actually would fall under the other hat that I have, emergency preparedness, and emergency response. So there's some commonality of ground for compliance and enforcement, but as much as has been discussed in recent public forums, there are things like it's more akin to what you have in a county with a building and plans type of scenario. So I understand what you're saying, but it's the way it's been.
Okay, just throwing it out there.
I appreciate the question because I was like, ACC and security, it doesn't compute for me. And
well, like
we've broken out parks and pool and the community center because we thought that was bunched up too much. I don't know who made that decision when, but anyway, so it would seem like from an accounting perspective that we would break this up too. So it's a good question. We send it back to Joel and Joe and see what you want to do about that.
Colin, did you?
No, that's it. I mean, yeah, I guess I was going to say, you kind of said it. I mean, we had departments that were commingled and people would talk about how this costs us this much money and that costs us that much money, but you couldn't never know because they were all together, and it's just better to track them independently. I'm not one that likes to create a bunch more work, but it does seem like it would be helpful.
Can I just comment really quickly? We're getting communication from Jamie and also our ACC coordinator. They're forwarding the hazard tree log to you, letting you know that it hasn't been updated because of COVID. But many of the community members don't realize what the process is to report trees for evaluation. So they're sending that over to you to look at.
Hey, Norm, under the contract and professional service on page, sorry, this one got cut off, so I can't tell. It's item number 7095. I don't know what page it is because it got cut out. Oh, 45. Did that item line got moved to another place? Because it seemed to disappear after 2020.
7095 is as follows. I had a GL report run for that. So other professional services, this includes primarily security solutions, who is our provider, and for repair and monitoring, such as in this case, it mostly includes the intrusion alarm, burglar systems for our facilities, fire monitoring, which is required by NFPA, National Fire Protection, video health for the camera systems, because cameras they've got what's called analytics on them, as well as monitored. So if they should start to develop an issue, we can track what it is, and remote management of the card access system.
So we don't have anything budget for it. That's why I was wondering, did it get moved?
Actually, 7095, that is correct. I'm gonna have to get with Joel as to what that is, but essentially a 2019 actual will show you what we spent on that.
Well, the 2019 shows about 20,000.
Correct.
But so if we don't have it in the 2021 budget, does that mean that it's just gonna be subtracted somehow from the overall budget for ACC security? Because right now it's showing 0.
I will have to get with the accounting manager to clear up that gap.
Okay, so that will probably be ready when the board sees it.
Sure, when we do this with the board presentation, we'll have that gap closed.
I just wanted to bring up one thing. We talked a little bit about the new home construction starts up there under revenue 4350 for 35,000. That represents, I think, 10 home starts. So anyone that's kind of new to this, the contractors, when they start a new home, they'll pay, I think it's $3,500. And we usually, I think this is a pretty standard, we just budget for 10. And then down, if you look under the expenses, under contracted and professional services, 6460, this ACC consultant, his fee comes out of those home starts. So it's the net of it is about $750. So that's been something that's been discussed before, as far as, you know, upping the revenue or whatnot, but you have to keep in mind that the two go together. And so if you increase the one, you also have to increase the expense that goes with it. Okay.
I can
How many
also,
home starts have we had then this year, and do we have some pending?
We did have new home construction that was allowed to restart under phase 1 under conditions. So that has been going forward. As of the initiation of phase 2, all construction had been allowed to continue or to start with the proper guidelines set forth for the governor's office. And on that day, shortly thereafter, we had 3 that are occurring that very short time. Plus, the ACC coordinator is continually reviewing those packages prior to submission to the ACC committee for approval. So it is moving forward.
So it sounds like, I mean, this.
Penny, I think there's one new package that has come in. There's 3 starts that were done in phase 1 that were approved before the COVID went in. And then there's 2 starts that they got their permits after March 23rd. And then I believe there's just one more that I've heard that has come in for approval.
Okay.
6.
Okay, so it sounds like we're, well, it's still a little early. I mean, it's the middle of June, but sounds like we might not meet our $35,000 income for this year. Is that a fair assessment, or am I?
Again, a lot of it's going to depend on how soon these guys, if they want to build. I mean, that's always, again, that's always a question, you know, when are they going to build or when are they going to start? When are they going to submit? At some point in time, just so everybody knows, you will get to the point where you are built out.
Right.
And you will not have this revenue.
Right. Well, we won't have the expense either. So.
Right.
And the other thing to consider, Penny asked a question about if they're going to build or not. Remember, their labor force is impacted by the virus and also the economy as well. So some of the contractors have personally made it very known to us they're having trouble getting their workforce back. So they're having struggles of a different dynamic, but they're not being immune to the situation.
Got it. Thank you.
When do they pay their fee? Is it when they submit their packet?
Yes.
And so that's before they clear the lot?
They turn their package in, and it goes through ACC for approval. They have to have county permit as well, and then they get approval, and then they can start. They get sections.
But do they have to have approval before they take out any of the trees?
They do.
Okay. I thought so, but I can remember.
Yeah,
I used to approve.
Everything has to be approved, not only from county, but from us as well.
Okay. So I saw three lots being prepared for builds today on my walk. So that was just around gate 3 and 9. So it does seem like it's picking up, but as far as actually building might be a while.
Two of those, I think, I know two of those. And I think the other one was one that was prior to March 23rd, who had their paperwork in early and could start on June 1. All the ones who were done after March 23rd could not start until we went to phase 2.
Okay. And actually one of them I saw might've just been someone getting hazard trees out of their property, not actually preparing for construction. But I saw there was lots of tree felling going on today. It was an exciting walk. Okay. Are we good with ACC, security, hazard trees, that weird conglomeration? All right. So capital repair replacement. So are we back to the back of our binders for this? Is that where you want us to go?
Yeah, page 63. Joel can chime in with this as well.
So basically, you would look at this in conjunction with, what we spoke about yesterday before we got to the departmental budgets on page 5. That shows that 2020 through 2029 yearly dues kind of breakdown stuff. And then that dovetails with the SERF sheets on page 61, starts on, for you, page 61. And then also with roads, which starts on page 67, I believe, for you. So possibly the best way for you to look at this would be to look at the page 5 to see in terms of like the SERF and the roads type breakout. Let me just knock out mailboxes. So this is just quick and easy, but basically all I did is I just looked at the reserve study through 2029, just looked at, oh geez, how much money would we have to be fully funded by the end of 2029? And then I just worked that into the number of dues payers. And then, so it just goes 2021, obviously we're staying the same, 67 cents. 2022 would just go to $1.10. And then through 2029, then we would be even with the 2029 amount on the reserve study to be fully funded for that. So basically the two big things would be SERF and roads. And then it comes down to what's on the SERF pages on page 61. And then on page 67, the roads. And then, it's by column. Each column has its own year. So this is just a function of all the projects that you could do during those years. And then it flows up to this page 5. And this shows you what it would look like on a dues type comparison, like the additional assessment on roads, additional assessment on SERF. That's just computing. Well, that's how much extra you'd have to have or to be fully funded for that year. Then if you get into a year like 2023, roads where you see a negative $5.92, that means in terms of everything planned, you'd be $5.92 under. So in a sense, you could think about that as if you're still paying $37.13, you're now building up your reserves in a sense with that, since you're not lowering it by $5.92. Each year builds upon another. So whatever the balance you had at the end of 2020 for the reserve or for this capital spending plan at the end of 2020, the capital amount that you have cash, you could think about it that way, you're in cash, then becomes the beginning cash for the next year, and then so on and so forth. So each year is linked from one year to the next. So it just flows right through. So if you move a project from one year and pull it back a few years, then that'll affect the dues in that year. And then that project becomes a little cheaper because of that escalation amount. Or if you move it from one year to the next, then obviously the dues in the year that you moved it from drop. And then the dues in the year that you moved it to would go up. And then the cost of the project itself would go up according to the escalation amount that gets tacked onto it as well. So this is primarily a function of basically all the different projects that you see currently listed to be worked on during each year. And then it would be whether or not you wanted to keep something in that year or move it to a different year, which would have a corresponding effect back to that dues kind of summary on page 5, that chart. Now in 2029, which I mentioned yesterday, on the notes section, these are the 5 things that have been kicked, from 1 year to 2029 for merely it's just a function of planning purposes. It just comes down to when it is that you actually want to do these items. If you want to pull it into a different year, then that year will become affected. But this would be the amount in the special assessment, just basically saying how much that would cost on a fully funded basis. Like, all of it's going to be paid for in cash if you did that. Now, obviously, if you took out a loan or something like that to work on something, then these amounts drop, since you don't have to pay for all of that out of your dues during that year. But that's basically the 10,000 foot level of how this works mathematically.
So just for information purposes, can you touch on how the various projects are put in the various years? I mean, I think you have the managers kind of go through and look at it and in detail, and maybe go through that process a little bit.
Yeah, what happens is based off what was put in the reserve study, these are the items that were put in for this year. And then what will happen is we'll go through and we'll rank them A, B, C, D, E, and prioritize them out from there, and then move them forward, or move them forward to wherever we feel, if it's obviously if it's the D one, we could push it out probably a couple of years and work on doing all the A's if we have the funding at that point. That's pretty much the process that Tony and prior finance people had set up. So we will, it'll be a full ranking just like that. Again, there's a piece of equipment, we might be able to push it a little further based off, it's staying together. It's not, there's not a lot of issues with it. So, but it is the same process that has been ranked for SURF for the last 3-4 years. And all the managers have input for that. And we sit down and we go over and we rank everything. And again, because things do change so much with capital and buildings and stuff. So, there might be something that was, it might look to be a B or a C, and then all of a sudden it's an A due to something, outside of our capacity happens. So.
But we are taking into account the physical, I don't know, actually, everyone, yeah.
Yeah, we're looking at the physical plant, yes. And one of the things we do not have in this reserve study, and again, we touched on it last night, is the component parts for barn 8. As I mentioned, I am getting quotes for shingled roof, flat roof, windows, siding. We'll have to get a price for the HVAC, electrical. I don't think anything else, Bruce. I don't think there's anything else in there we'd have to look at. Do you?
Plumbing?
Plumbing. Yeah, we could look at the plumbing.
What about painting?
That's We do that in operations, correct, Bruce?
Yes, except for the outside of the barn. Yes, you're correct.
Yeah, I was thinking about the outside of you're gonna.
If we side it, if we get new siding, we won't, for right now, if we look to do siding, it probably needs to be sided before it needs to be painted.
No, I know, but it's a siding and painting. It's not just a siding. So I was thinking about the cost.
If we resided, the painting would be part of the cost, yes.
Okay, so that's assumed. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that included that, because and that the bid was going to include painting as well as doing the residing.
Barn.
Joe, can you list those off again? Plumbing, windows, siding, electrical. Was there anything else?
Flat roof.
Flat roof. Like the middle section?
Well, we'll start at the top. We'll start, you got a shingled roof, you got a flat roof. You have HVAC, you have siding, you have windows, you have electrical, you have plumbing.
A lot of stuff.
Well, I have two questions because this is my first time kind of looking at this. For as far as everything that's under the 2020, that's already been spent or saved or whatever budget for. So we can't move any of those. Is that correct?
That's not right. This is from the reserves. Like, we haven't done the design work for Barn 8, right, Joe?
Yeah.
So that would have to be moved to another year.
Okay, that's why I was wondering if we move that Barn 8 design for rebuild to another year, that's gonna, Joel, right? It will fluctuate.
It'll fluctuate the capital needs for that year. Yes, correct.
Okay. But the Barn 8 emergency repair, is that what you guys were just talking about, or is that a different thing?
No, that was put in case that was put in, and Tony and Leslie or Penny can chime in because they have a little bit more history on it. But that was put in when they decided to try to do the whole barn as a package. There are things that break, i.e. the heater. If there's a heater that breaks, that would be falling under emergency repair. Okay. So something that happens right now that is an emergency for that building, that's where that would come from. Okay. Because the component parts, Trang, are not there.
So it looks like the tennis court that we were talking about a couple finance meeting now has moved to 2021. Is that what I'm saying?
There's a couple there's two tennis courts, one at the marina and one at the rec center.
Like the resurfing and the fencing part that we were talking about, I think in our last or two finance meetings.
We're working on getting prices on those as we speak.
Okay, so that is something we should be budgeting, or should
well, we have it in the a line item this year, and we have it in the line item for next year as well.
Is that something that we could possibly move? Consider no, that has to be done in 2021.
It had to be done in 2015, so yeah, it has to.
Yeah, and again, some of those projects, Trang, we will look at and we will rank them, and A's have to get done, and that is, I believe, one of the projects.
That was moved to an A, Joe, I think.
Yeah.
There was a number of community members who participate in tennis out there, and tennis facilities are very bad. And
yeah, the asphalt is cracked and stuff. So, but again, Trang, we're looking at getting a project scope of work for that in a bid. I know Jacob can chime in because he's helping us with that. It's probably, we're looking at just doing asphalt over those and milling and overlay. We get that price. I think it'll be a little better than what we think, don't you, Jacob?
Yeah, I'm waiting for on-site visits from the four I've contacted. I have redone tennis courts before with asphalt, or I've done some, I have not physically done, but contracted repairs to concrete. But there's significant cracking in some of them. So we're checking into our options, and then I'll get those bids to Joe and Finance Committee.
So I wanted to back up a little bit and kind of talk about the process we went through last year to budget for capital. So we had the same report, Trang and Lori, since you are new. And we were kind of looking at it, trying to see, okay, how much do we need kind of leveled off over the next several years in capital funding in order to be able to get to what we call baseline funding, which is being able to pay for the things that need to be done in that year, except for these large projects. So I don't think we were quite to baseline funding, but that was what the capital funding dues increase was for last year, to get us closer to this level where we could do these things. So if we do end up moving projects to next year, we have theoretically kind of already funded most of them for this year. So we might make some decisions to, yeah, you know, we can't get the contractors out of here or whatever, we're moving it. But what we're trying to do is be able to have enough funding each year to be able to do these projects in the year that they're in. Because if we move them to the next year, we'll actually just see them in our reserve study with a little bit higher price tag. That's just kind of the mechanics of how it works. So that has been one of our goals, is to work towards baseline funding for our capital reserves so that we can do the projects as they come up, instead of in years past, for many years past, where we had, you know, probably close to $1 million worth of projects that needed to be done and funds of maybe 300,000 to 400,000. And we had to pick only the very most critical things to get done, and everything else just got pushed aside. And I think there were even some larger things that were critical, like the barn, but we just didn't have the funds to do it at all. And so it got pushed just because we couldn't. And I'm sure Penny and Tony and Colin can share a lot more about that, but it was
Bruce.
Oh, and Bruce as well. Extremely eye-opening for me to kind of go through that process and see, as long as we own these assets, we need to be setting aside funds to take care of them, because just continuing to push them back doesn't end up saving us money in the long run. It ends up costing us more. So it's just my little spiel.
So just for clarification, again, I think Trang was trying to ask this too, is what's on the 2020 list now on this document is, with the possible exception of the spec design for Barn 8 rebuild, would we expect to either have already seen these or see these for this year? Is that a fair question?
That's what I was wondering, because the quiet pool, all that filtering stuff, according to Maddie earlier, she said those are already done. But so
I can tell you this. So what's in that 2020 column, approximately 228,000 you've already seen and approved. Like, and that would be the, like Trang said, the quiet pool, pump house equipment, security cameras, trim mower, utility vehicles, and marina dock replacement. So you guys have already seen that and approved it, and the board has approved it.
Okay.
And that comes out to about 227,636.
Okay.
So what we haven't seen yet, it looks like some golf things, the tennis courts.
What we're looking at going for the rest of the year right now is a playground equipment and the tables and benches. And I believe the tennis courts, that was the only things that we had outstanding that we were going to look at going forward.
Let me say that the one thing that we're missing here that I think is very important that we don't have is the SURF spreadsheet showing all the items that are open and approved and where their status is as far as what we've funded and what's remaining. That, I think that's critical, so we know exactly what we've been funding and what we are planning on funding for 2020. And we don't have that here. And I think that's really confusing to the committee, not asking all these questions about all these numbers in the reserve study. If you can provide that spreadsheet, which shows all the open items that we have where they are in the process of being completed. That would really help everybody on the committee know what we're doing on SERP.
We'll have that for you for the finance meeting. I believe that's where that goes in, correct, Joel?
Yeah, and actually, Tony, it's funny you mentioned that because that's actually the sheet that I was reading off when I was telling you the stuff in 2020.
Yeah, that really makes, I think it really makes sense to everybody once they see those numbers and what we decided to approve for SERP for 2020.
I think that's already available because that's something that does get attached to the Finance Committee agendas, including the financials each month. And when was the last time that actually was published out for the Finance Committee?
I haven't seen it for a while.
Okay, I thought they did one recently.
Is there any way we can not go all the way to 2030 if we could just like maybe the next 5 years, so then I don't have to squint my eyes so hard to kind of see everything? I mean,
Trang, I've had, there's a lot of material in there, and it is hard to read. I even with my cheaters on, I still need the Hubble telescope to be able to read some of it. So
yeah, I mean, the numbers could still say the same, whatever, all the way through. But if we can just, and I can show you, Joel, how to shrink it to make it just within the next 5 years, because we're only looking at the next 2 or 3 years anyway. But I like to be able to get a better picture because right now everything is just overwhelming to look at.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you. It becomes really small when putting all those years on there.
Yeah, so is that possible, Joel? Can we like just cut it off for 5 years?
Sure. Yeah, that's what you want to see. Yeah,
I would like that. I mean,
yeah.
Well, what do we need to present to the board though? Do we need to have all 9 years in here, or can we do just 5 years?
well, I mean, it's the same number. It's just you're gonna just not show the other, 10
The
years.
question is, do we have to show the 9 years versus only showing 5 years? That's the question I have.
I think legally 5 years is all that's required, but I would have to check RCWs to see for sure.
Yeah, I just had the same question as what are we required? Also, in years past, we've also printed it on like the bigger,
Longer.
I don't know if it was the
I'd
A4
rather just do the 5 years, even with a bigger paper. It's just all these numbers popping out. It's just hard to wrap my head around what I need to focus on. So if we could do 5 years.
Also, the columns N through Y don't need to be as wide as they are. Actually, J through Y don't need to be as wide as they are.
There you go.
I can make the font a little bit bigger to scale them.
Whatever. So, yeah, just to make it a little bit more readable. I mean, even with my glasses, I have trouble reading.
yeah, like I said, I need the Hubble telescope and my cheaters.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's it.
Can I borrow your telescope, Joe? Because obviously my cheaters aren't working very good.
Okay, I'll bring it over to the house for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So, is there a possibility of us getting that for
Blown up for you? Yeah, we can. We'll work on that for you. Try and we'll get the bigger print for everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, this is always a I find it always confusing, and Tony, thank God that you are still on the committee and can help us go through this, because you and I think it was Rick did so much really good work on this several years ago to help get us better data and better focused and have it tie back to the reserve study and so forth. So we are in so much better shape than we were even 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. So these documents are really rich in information, and it's hard to grasp it all when you first start looking at it and understanding it. It's just a little tedious, and without that document that Tony's just requested, it makes it harder to interpret, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. We do need a column showing where they are in the process too.
Yeah.
There too.
So that's helpful. And yeah, I think that's enough for now, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, you know, I'm gonna say basically the same thing I said last night. I don't like the figures on page 5. I think they're misleading. I think the reason we took barn 8 and the maintenance building out, because our dues increases would be significantly higher from 2020 through 2029, significantly higher than what you see on here on page 5. And we took those out because we recognized that both of those assets needed exceptional amount of work, and it would probably be cheaper in the long run to replace them than to continue adding on to these assets. And we took I think it was anywhere from $1 million to $1 and $2 million out of barn 8 and maintenance that was covering these capital funds for the next 5 or 6 years. We took those out, and it reduced our capital needs or funding needs or dues significantly. And if you're going to add those back in, I don't have a problem adding back in, but you're going to see a significant increase in dues amounts for the upcoming years. Significant.
So they have to be addressed one way or the other, Tony.
Yep.
Either you're going to build a new building or you're going to replace what's in there. So they have to be shown somewhere.
I know. The question is,
I mean, I mean, we have an obligation to provide the community with that information.
But what you're saying, Joe, is that you're looking at numbers out there and finding what the roof's going to cost and how it's going to replace the siding. You're getting those numbers. If you get those numbers and you plug those in, then getting a new building is ridiculous then, because you're spending all that money, new money, throwing it into old stuff. And that's where my concern is. You're coming up with these numbers to do these things, makeshift things on the barn 8. We have to be committed to either continuing with barn 8 and renovating barn 8 or replacing barn 8. We can't do both of these things at the same time.
Very true, but I got to have numbers. I got to have accurate numbers, Tony, to be able to make that case one side or the other.
Right, but where are you going to put those numbers? Where are you going to put those numbers?
Got to have the data in front of us so the residents here can see what it's going to be more cost effective. Either replace what's broken or build a whole new building. But I got to have those numbers and that data to make some type of an intelligent. Everybody here needs to make an intelligent decision on that. And without those numbers, Tony, no one can make that number or make that decision.
My feeling is that regardless of what we do, it's probably going to have to take a special assessment. I think what was in the reserve study before was spread out over multiple years.
Right.
The repairs were, and it's probably actually more cost effective to do it, at one time. And so I think regardless, and I think that the numbers that were in the reserve study for repairs before were probably a bit low because it didn't incorporate what's behind the siding, that we're going to have to fix and so my gut feeling is that whatever we do, it's probably going to have to be a special assessment, but I don't think that that's something that we're looking at for 2021. I think that would be beyond then. We're going to get the information, and long range planning will hopefully take a look at those and be able to give us, some options and some comparisons and be able to, working with staff too, I'm not putting this all on them, but, to make that decision, but we have to get there. We have got to make a decision on this and move forward.
I'm not disagreeing with it. I'm just telling you my point of view on page 5. If you're going to put this in the public domain, how are you going to put it? And that's where my primary issue is. All I care about is budget for 2021. All I care about. But when you look at page 5, that's a budget for the next 9 years. And that's where I have a problem with what this document is right here, because I don't know what it assumes.
Well, it assumes that we work off of a minimum necessary carry forward of $500,000 for SURF. And it gives the impression that in 2025, our SURF is funded. And
Yes.
it may be funded for the next year, which it's not, but it's certainly not anywhere close to a funding level that would be recommended of an HOA. And it looks like 2025, 26, 27, we are overfunded, which couldn't be further from the truth. So
Absolutely correct.
working off of a carryover of $500,000 per year is not anywhere close to adequate or accurate. And it sends a message that's confusing and counterproductive to what we're trying to do.
So what I'm hearing Joe say is that he's getting those numbers, and then those numbers will go into this spreadsheet. Is that accurate? Did I miss it? Did I miss that?
No, they'll go in. I mean, they'll go in just like we have the other barn, and you have to decide when they're going to be done. But
So
I got to have the numbers so that where the costs are going to fall.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all in agreement on getting those numbers and making sure that we're accounting this. I think Tony was onto something though, if I understood what he was saying, I'm wondering whether or not, now ultimately going out to the community, we do have an obligation through the WCIOA to provide some kind of information, and I forget what the time period is and all that kind of stuff. So I'm relying on Karen and Joel and to figure out all of that stuff, okay? So, but I think in the meanwhile, what we're trying to do is make sure that we understand these numbers, because these numbers are in the public space anyway. And so when they change, we know that we're going to get bombarded with questions as to, well, how come you showed us the surplus in 25 through 2027 and now you're telling us there's no surplus? You changed the numbers, and and it's like, well, yeah, because it was a work in progress. So I'm wondering whether or not, because Barn 8 and the maintenance building, because you've got to do the same thing for the maintenance building, I think, as well as, I'm not sure about the renovations to the clubhouse. I don't know where that stands. But anyway, I'm wondering whether or not, because these are items that that you've pushed out, these 5 items that you've pushed out, whether or not for planning purposes, not for the quote requirement what goes to the community, but for better understanding for us as a finance committee, and then also for the board, if we shouldn't have those particular items delineated. So it's like everything else, and then here's Barn 8, here's the maintenance building, and here's the clubhouse refurbishment, and here's the marina parking lot, because we know that those are big chunk items. And all of those are well beyond the useful life of those things. I mean, that's the part of the reserve study that we've been hearing for at least 9 years, that our buildings were beyond their useful life, based on all of the criteria that the reserve study professionals use. So now we're dealing with the reality of we've got buildings that, in my understanding, had been categorized as beyond their useful life, and we're trying to play catch up. And we're trying to determine and trying to reveal, as you said, Joe, to the board and to the community, here's what it's going to cost to refurb the Barn 8. And here's what we think it's going to cost, even if we used the stuff, God forbid that I even say this, but even if we use the estimate from the revitalization for what that building was going to cost, or something along those lines, if we had those separated out, so we kind of have a sense of what are we looking at, you know, for, geez, and by the way, when do you realistically need to replace the roof on Barn 8? Is it a 2021 item? Is it a 2022 item? Not, you know, can't be cast in stone, but where are those? Siding sure looks like it should be done like yesterday. I mean, I went by there yesterday and down in the multi-purpose room, there's a gigantic hole over the window that goes right into the siding, right above the window. It must be, I don't know, maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe I was just like, but it sure looked like it was like either baseball or softball sized hole above there. There was stuff hanging out of the hole. So I know that we've got, you know, we've got bird intrusion in that. We've been saying that for years. We've been trying to do the holes and all of that kind of stuff. And, you know, so I want us to have realistic numbers. Great, Joe, that you're going out and getting those. Secondly, I want to know realistically, what year does that stuff need to be done? Just so that we don't lose the building because we're not taking care of the envelope.
And without the information, I can't tell you if, you know, the roof is a, you know, if it's a 25-year commercial roof and it's got 10 years, I don't know that. That information is something we don't have. So
I don't understand that.
Well, let's say you have a shingled roof and they have a life expectancy of 25 or 30 years.
We have a metal roof on this barn. So
you have metal roof? Okay. So a metal roof, I mean, if it's metal, you can go a lot longer. The flat rubber roof, who knows how long that's been there and what kind of shape that's in, because that does have the life expectancy.
Redone like 3 times in the last 5 years.
That means you have an issue there. So that's the stuff that I need to get so I can put it into these reserves.
Yeah.
Okay. Get an idea what we're going to spend and what the lifespan and when it needs to be done.
But I think that's what Tony and Colin have been alluding to too, is that we need to be realistic about this if we're going to put it back in, which is fine. I don't have a problem. Put it back in. I'm not arguing with that. I'm not saying do it in one way or another. I'm saying let's make sure that we are illuminating through this discussion process, of which we have several more months to go, or we have this month and next month at least, illuminate what that line item is for all of the repairs and what is it for a rebuild as an estimate or whatever it is. But just to start becoming more realistic, this number, I feel horrible about actually, because it doesn't include anything regarding Barn 8. I mean, all it has is this note down at the bottom about something way out in 2029, and I don't even know why you picked 2029 and not 5 years from now. So, you know, those are the things that I don't understand about this, and it totally gives the wrong impression if we don't have that. So I'd say, great, go get those numbers, but get them now and let's put them on here and let's make some assessments and some judgment calls for when is the roof done, when is the siding done, when is the plumbing done, when is the electrical done, when is the HVAC done, and put that down there and let's see that so that it's a more realistic capital reserves spreadsheet.
By the way, so all of these items in the notes section, or if you go to the capital spending plan for both SURF and roads, they're all called out individually at the very bottom. Under the section says items considered for special assessment.
Tell me what page that is.
That's a page 5, isn't it?
Well, the page 5 is like the monthly due summary thing, but see, if we just flip to the SURF one, for example. Okay. So page 66.
think it's 68 for us.
Oh, okay, 68 for you.
Mhm.
So you see kind of that last table of numbers in there, then under 2029.
Yes.
So those are all the individual amounts that for those items in 2029. And it listed by asset ID number, and the number to the left of that, the 5,510,000, that was the amount of the 2019 reserve study. And then in 2029, of course, it's bumping up because of being escalated 2.5% every single year.
Okay, so you've got that line item covered. Great. That's not, so the line item that Tony's been talking about and that I've been talking about is what is it for the refurbishment of those buildings? So that in the interim, because this is a Barn 8 rebuild. That's a rebuild. That's a new building, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So that's not what, so great. You've got that number. Don't need to get a different number apparently, because you got that number. Fine. But I'm talking about the stuff that's not on this SERF right now.
So Penny, what you're
That's
saying?
the stuff I'm getting, Penny.
No, I know. That's the stuff you're getting. And so.
This
but
was
I'm
asked during the last board meeting for me to start looking at some of this stuff, and that was 10 days ago. Contractors and getting bids just don't happen overnight.
So Tony made a suggestion that even though the numbers might not be accurate, that we go back and we resurrect those items that were taken off of the list and resurrect it using the last reserve study, and at least coming up with that number that said, here's what it would cost to do all of these things. So, and then you can plug in as you get those numbers in another month, you get those numbers, then you can go back and you can plug those numbers in. But at least now it's useful to have the line item that says, here's what Barn 8, the repair for the HVAC and the flat roof and the fire system and the exterior, the windows and the, all of that kind of stuff. What did our previous study say? And put those numbers in and use those. I think that's Tony. Isn't that what you were suggesting last night?
I did, and I would be happy if you needed any assistance. I can go back and look at the Dover Reserve studies and help out if you needed that help.
So I think I'm hearing kind of two different things that we're talking about here. One is we need to have the two things to compare to make a decision, of what to do for. The other thing is, Tony and Penny, if I'm paraphrasing correctly, it sounds like what your concern is that we are showing that we are better funded than we actually are because we don't have these component pieces in there that we know need to be planned for. So we have just the building, a new building in there, but that's pushed out way to 2029, but we don't have anything calculating into our expected dues or our dues projection for these replacement components. And is that what you're saying, that you would like to get some numbers in there and put in the years when we think it's most realistic to put them to better show how well funded we actually are?
Yeah, we would be terribly funded, terribly funded by adding those components in there.
I think that's what we have to do. Otherwise, we're being negligent, because even if you put off waiting for that decision, that data has to, that Joe is gathering, that the board said, go ahead and get it, Joe, and so that we have those numbers. We need to start somewhere in this budgeting process. And we don't, and right now we've got, I don't know, $1 million, $2 million, I don't know what it is, dollars that aren't showing up here that, I think we need to do. I mean, heck, a reside on that barn has got to be super expensive.
We got a note from Linda that said Barn 8 components, 687,540. I don't know. I don't have the other reserve study right in front of me right now. So
Joel, can Tony get you the information from the 2018 reserve study, and can you plug it into this?
Is that to me?
Joel, yeah.
We could, you mean, so basically what you're saying is remove the building and then plug in these component units.
Just plug them in from the most recent reserve study that had the information, plug it in until we get new and better information, but that's a good starting point.
Because like, when I'm quickly looking at this reserve study, I'm just scanning it real quickly from 2019, like I see some component units, but it's saying like 2042 and those types of years. So I'm just logically guessing this is to be done after, this building would be built and whenever we do it. So, I mean, for some,
all we would need to know is the items that need to be done between 2021 and 2029. Anything after 2029 is irrelevant in this discussion.
I think if you go back to the probably 2017 or 2018 reserve study, you'd have those numbers in their original year where they were. I think what happened is when they put the new building in, everything got pushed out, the 20 or 30 years until it thought it would need to be replaced. So I think if you go back to a previous reserve study, you'd have that right in front of you.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Linda was texting us here on this and saying, I mean, the exterior siding was almost $2.25 million. So, I mean, it's big numbers. I mean, we can't ignore that. That is the point, Joel and Joe. And I think you're doing what you're doing. To get us that information, which is fabulous. And we appreciate that. We just need something in the interim so that everyone really understands that, I mean, there's a gaping hole in this data and surf right now.
Yeah, so I guess, Tony, what you're saying is these component units were previously in the spending plan, but they were removed and replaced with the building.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Which should have never happened. They should have been pulled down just like we did with kicking everything out to 2029. So you always had that data. It should have never been moved out.
Well,
yeah, we know you made that clear, and we're sorry. We didn't try to make, we thought we were doing the right thing. We had a discussion over this, I mean, for like a year, and that was the decision that was made, and it was based on.
It was not just based on the finance committee. It was based on the management and the administration, because we worked with Jennifer and Mitch on doing this stuff. So it was a combination of my input, Rick's input, the finance committee's input, and management's input. So it was overall, that was the assumptions that were made.
It puts everybody now in a position behind the 8 ball, which really is not a good position to be in.
Joel, we can't do anything about that right now.
And I'm trying to get all the.
I know, it is what it is. It was a decision that was made. We got to move on from here.
Oh, we are. We're going to move on. We're going to get the numbers, and they're going to be put in. Well, at least so we have an idea of what it would cost to refurbish that building, and if it's cost effective to do that or cost effective to build a new one. We won't know that until we have true numbers.
Okay. And just as a question, I don't know what we did, what was done. Tony, Colin, maybe Joel or Joe, you may know, or Leslie. What did we do in regards to the maintenance building? Did we do the same thing there?
Yeah, the same thing's done, and that's also included in that footnote. And it's going to be in that line that I previously pointed to.
Well, I know you did that, Joel, but what I wasn't sure was whether or not the components were removed like they were from the Barn 8.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and that just goes back to my point of saying, geez, I think we need to have these line items summarized in some way so that it's great to see these little line items, but if it, I don't know, I think putting it together to say, here's everything else, and here's Barn 8, and here's the maintenance building, and here's the marina parking lot, and they line up in these years, and just to make it a little bit more readable, because those are our major projects. That's where the major money is going. So I think it would just, at least for a discussion time, and not, I mean, I'm not at all suggesting that that we should change the reserve study and not account for these by the detail. So don't hear me about that. This is, I think, the way that we should kind of look at the data that we need to look at in this discussion for budgeting purposes. Let's make it a little bit easier here to see what the costs are for this. So I'm done with my soapbox.
I just have one last question, Joel, is on 2029 on the additional assessment on page 5. You show $64.17 increase.
Can't hear you,
Yeah.
Tony. You
Hey,
weren't.
hear any of that?
That
Look
again?
away from your mic.
The $64.17,
What page?
page 5. Under SURF,
What year?
2029.
Okay.
You show an increase in additional assessment of $64.17.
Right.
I've looked at the SURF data for that 2029, and it doesn't. That $64 is way out of whack with what you have, unless it's calculating that $4 million and the barn 8, the $1 million and some odd cents in maintenance building. But there shouldn't be a $64 increase on that for that date, for that year.
Well, if all these years are cumulative, meaning so like every single year works into the next, so the ending balance of one year becomes the beginning balance of the next.
You have $13 million on 2029, and on 2028 you only had $678,000, and you had a slight increase of $1.88 in 2028 and 2028, but all of a sudden it increases to $64. Doesn't make any sense.
Well, that's just, I mean, all this is doing in 2029 is it's adding up all the projects. And then,
right, and that includes the buildings.
No, but the buildings are called out separately down below in that shaded region.
But your $64 is not correct.
It is, meaning like once you pull all those items out and put it down into the shaded region, that's what that would be.
Joel, there's not enough capital projects in 2029 to make that $64 increase.
He's got the marina parking lot in there in 2029, 2.6 million.
Where's that at?
That's in roads though.
That's in roads.
And that's pulled out too.
Yeah. That's
so yeah, what's the big project then that's driving a 64?
Yeah, I don't see the project that's driving that $64.
Hold on 1 second.
I thought that would include the new buildings.
That doesn't quite make sense either, because that would be a lot larger than that, but.
The January 1st carryover becomes way wrong. That's where the problem is. So the formula for that one, for the January 1st carryover for 20.
That carryover is right. In 2028, the ending balance is 441,258. And that becomes the January carryover for 2029.
Okay, so without these large projects, then it looks like the remainder of the project. So the total spend for 2029 is $14,079,671. And then if you subtract out 13,191 out of that for the large projects that are called out separately down here in this special assessment portion, then you only have like 1 million left, which wouldn't wouldn't equate to a
$64 increase.
Yeah. So just take a look at that.
I'm fairly certain the math is right, but I'll look at it again on that.
Isn't the Barn 8 rebuild in there?
The Barn 8 rebuild is in 2029, but then it's called out separately.
I think that $64, it includes Barn 8 and the
Maybe
maintenance building.
Or maybe there's a hidden line in there somewhere. You might have some hidden lines that we're not seeing.
Well,
That could-
Because
you
when we did,
also have $4.8 million in 2029 for the clubhouse interior refurbishment.
You know what? Let's just lay off. He'll let him look at it. He can find it's probably a formula. It's not a big deal. It's a worthless. I mean, $64 increase makes no sense anyway. Just like the reductions in the
other
4 years before that don't make any sense. So I don't even know why we're looking at.
So let's talk about this a little bit.
You know, here's another thing though, is like, for example, this automatically also tacks on a 10% budgetary contingency in every year. So that's another thing to take into consideration that all the expenses that you have planned for the year also assumes that it could go 10% over as well. So since you have 14,079,671 figured to work on 2029, that's 1.4 million of budgetary contingency.
That's what it is. It's the contingency, but wouldn't that be with the projects anyway? Since it's the contingency would be dependent. I mean,
yeah,
a good portion of it, 1.3 million would be contingent on those projects.
Right. The contingency shouldn't show up in the basic.
This is not something he's trying to solve right now. Let him figure this out. We're meeting next week.
So I just want to talk about this dues projection worksheet. I guess I was under the impression that it needed to be kind of shown in a certain way based off of our reserve study. And Colin, you're right. This doesn't show fully funded, but I think the calculation was to baseline funded, meaning that we could just, you know, basically pay in cash for all of the projects in the year in which they land, which is not the recommended funding. The recommended funding is what, 30 to 50%, I think is what has been quoted. So yes, you wouldn't want to just drop your dues. What we want to do is first make sure we're baseline funding and then be able to grow our reserves over time. So I guess my question is, do we have to show it in this way, or do we have some flexibility to show it in a more realistic way, which would be, we would keep those dues flat over those years when it's showing that we're overfunded, even though we're not, and then kind of recalculate those numbers so that we're starting to build reserves. I guess I'm a little, and maybe Leslie, you can help out here. What kind of flexibility do we have in the way that we presented this? Or maybe we need to go back to the RCWs and just really look closely at what we're required to show and how we're required to show it. Because I don't want to put something out to the membership that's going to be confusing, but I also know we have some obligations in what information that we show.
So let's get that information
Okay.
and clarification, and then let's decide. Here's, you know, if we show it in a way that doesn't make sense because that's quote unquote what we're required to show. I mean, that's what got us into trouble last year, right? Where it looked like we were going to have, I don't know, some astronomical kind of number of dues, you know, and it was like, well, no, that was based on the reserve, blah, blah, blah. So I think what I might be useful in once we figure out what can be supported, and I'm just going to say this because I'm not sure how we could make it clear, but that maybe we have a way of saying, here's what we're required to say, here's what it is, here's why these numbers are this way. But realistically, it would make more sense for all of us to have something that looks like this.
Mhm.
And perhaps we can do something like that to make it a little bit more clear, because obviously it got totally misinterpreted last year, and that was very unfortunate, and there was a lot of controversy around a lot of things. I mean, the good news is, I think that staff has done a lot of work here to say, okay, we're going to try and absorb as much as we can here, and we're proposing to keep dues flat, and that kind of gives us a breather to do some more of the necessary work to go, in preparation for 2022 and beyond. But I think in some ways there's a bit of a breather. Community might not see it that way, but that's how I see it. And then let's get the answers and then decide what the presentation of the data should be.
Let's have this discussion further at the next Wednesday's meeting. We're on the same page. I was thinking the same thing, Penny, as far as, we have to put what the state requires us to put, and then we'll put right next to that, look, this is a more realistic expectation of what the membership should expect. And if it's side by side, there'll be less confusion. And that's what we should do.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I think we're going to have a really long meeting next week. So that's part of the reason of just using this working meeting to kind of discuss it and flesh this kind of stuff out a little bit.
I know it's good, but at least we won't have to put staff through our 3-hour meeting next week.
Right. All right. And not unless they want to come. I mean, join us.
Love to see them.
We are definitely a fun bunch. I'm sure they can't wait.
Oh, I don't want to
Wednesday evenings with us.
I don't leave the question unanswered. I saw this from Linda earlier and I replied it through text, but I don't know if she got the answer she wanted. We were, I guess she questioned about the 2019 bus shelter, Joel, and it looks like it was moved to 2021 and 2022. Am I correct by answering that for that? Because it was project A, I guess, for 2019, and she wanted to know what happened to that.
Yeah, so basically every project in 2019, if if it was voted and approved by the board, then that works its way into the January 1. That's already taken into effect in the January 1, 2020 balance. And then if it wasn't done, then it was either kicked to 2020 or kicked to 2021. So
okay.
It was.
So I'm not exactly sure if it's the same bus shelter that she was talking about, but it looks like on your chart, it shows 2019 when it was approved. And then 2 are being done in 2021 and 1 is being done in 2022. So hopefully, Linda, I know you're out there, if you got that answer.
Yeah, they were just moved out, Trang, that was all.
Yeah, that's what she wanted to know. So I answered that, but I don't know if my answer was correct.
Yeah, they just were moved out. They were just pushed out to later years.
Okay.
We will be going through this same process again with the board next month. And so if the board members do have any questions, I think that would be the time for them to ask it.
We didn't go over, I mean, we kind of wrapped roads and surf together. Were there any specific roads discussions? It seemed like most of it kind of wrapped around how to present it in an accurate way. I think the only big project in roads was the marina repaving.
Nope.
Oh, no.
Nope. Next year, if you look at the study, we will be doing some more road resurfacing.
Yeah.
2021 and in 2022. I have started Tyler already getting mileages and prices and stuff like that. So we're going forward to get our pricing for that ready to go.
Are we the same company that we did the resurfing, or is it a different?
No.
Were you satisfied with resurfacing that we did? You weren't?
Not at all. Not one bit.
what was the major issues with that?
Personally, I don't think it's a very good product. I got areas where she's already bled through,
Mm.
meaning the cracks. So I do not think it was a very good product. I didn't like how the product went down. I didn't like how the product cured. So Tyler and I are looking at different options to do to the roads.
Okay. Okay.
Along the similar lines, are we talking?
We might be looking to do, again, since most of your roads here are smaller and there's not a lot of traffic on them, looking at possibly doing a tar and chip and fog coat single lift on the ancillaries, which have
Whatever
less,
the hell that means.
as well as maybe doing a double lift on the major roads, a little bit heavier roads.
So could you say a little bit more about what you just said?
Okay, you have it's called tar and chip, basically. So you shoot a layer of hot stuff down, hot oil, tack oil, come back over with chip, roll it in, and you can go right on it. You keep brushing it, and then you can come back with this other material called fog coat, which it's basically sealing your driveways, how nice and black they turn. Shoot that right on it, and away you go.
Hey, Joe, at some point you got to stop saying how you got roads there. You know, you've been here a while. You can say our roads.
There are roads. Yeah.
You know what? Our roads. Makes me think you're moving back to Pennsylvania.
No, not yet.
Okay, so once we get through, it looks like we've got 2021 and 2022, then are we kind of back? We have some breathing room before we have to start this process again. I think what was it, about every 7-ish years?
Yeah, let me see where she comes up again. I don't see where they come up again. I'll have to look. Again, I need a bigger print.
Just say
I will find out when they come back up again, but they will be back on rotation again a few years out, and I'll find out where.
I see it, line 43, road resurfacing all main roads, 6-year interval, 678. So it's 43, 44.
Okay.
There we go. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And what about culverts?
Culverts for next year, we have 2 that will be done. We moved one because it has to get we have to get some permitting and working with Lake Whatcom. And I have one next year that's the same, working with Lake Whatcom. So I combine both of those. So I only have one trip to Lake Whatcom. And then there is some design work next year, and that would be it. This year we have culverts that are going to be done. 200, 212, and 213 will be done. And then we have some spec work that we're going to be doing in 2020 for some culverts in 2022. So there's not a lot of road work going on right now. And then we always have our pothole fixing. So.
Okay. Are we going to be able to get to the windward wall retaining?
That is getting ready. Windward wall, windward drainage is getting ready to go to spec to bid. It's already spec'd out. We're dropping that out to bid.
And drainage, you said?
Yep, the drainage as well.
Okay.
Both of those they're all ready to go. One of the things that was on there is that we ended up getting done was 30 Fairway. I don't know if anybody remembers that. That was a crossover culvert that you had somewhere in the neighborhood of 83,000 in design and install. We got that done last year for about 52,000 altogether, install and design. So we had an opportunity when we had crews here working, we jumped on it and we picked it off last year. And so we're a little bit ahead there.
That was the one that's item 53. Is that, or is that different?
Yes, that is it. That was already done. Yeah, we did that last year.
We did under cost.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yay for you.
All right, anything else with roads?
No, I was just looking at it, I mean, it just kind of, I was looking back at, not my favorite slide, page 5. Just it's just kind of weird that we would do a $5 increase or $6 increase in 2022 and then say we don't need that $6 the next year. So I know that that's I'm asking for something, but it's just like, that looked weird to me. And it's like, geez, is there anything that you would look at in the 22, 23 years that you could move a little bit? Is there that would naturally, I mean, I'm not asking it to artificially, but would naturally and realistically smooth that curve. And you don't need to answer that now. It's just, I'd say take that as go back and look at it and see if there's anything that, is obvious that you could do to smooth that out.
Can we put a formula in the carryover requirement so there's a range so that it doesn't go negative? It'll allow it to build up a little bit, a reserve amount, as opposed to having a flat amount, Joel?
Well, I mean, like for these individual years,
you can have a formula that says that, this cell won't go, it's a minimum of 500,000 and a maximum of 2 million or something. So.
Oh, so it automatically dumps all of the extra into there, but won't let it go below.
Yeah, and then we'd end up seeing a $5 increase, and the next year there'd be a $5, and the next year there'd be a $5 instead of a $9, and the next year there'd be a $5 instead of a $10, so it would just smooth it out.
You're talking about on page 5?
Yes. And it's all based off of a formula that says that you're starting with an amount every year that's the same amount, which doesn't allow us to build up actual reserves.
Yeah, and now are you just talking about the assessment line item, like the 2020 assessment that carries across?
No, the additional.
Oh, the additional assessment down below it.
I'm looking.
Yeah, we're trying to smooth it out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so basically, like I said, this is just like I'll pick on 2023. So it's just that is, like I said, is a function of 2023 from a fully funded basis. But getting back to what you said, if we didn't increase it by 592, then it would be building up the reserves.
Yeah, we kind of want to.
That's what we want to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is an informational thing in terms of, yeah, we just wouldn't decrease it by that. We would just leave it to continue to build up the reserves. So meaning this 592, we could just take it away, and then add that. And then the next year, that 932 amount for 2024 would effectively decrease a little because of that.
Yeah, and for the roads, you've got a target reserve. Am I looking at now? It's the surf. Shoot. For the roads, target reserve carryover 5,000. You just have a formula in there. It says the minimum is 500,000, but we'd like to build it up to, but the max is like 2 million or whatever,
Yeah.
And then that allows it to flow from year to year.
Yeah. Of course, the thing for that would be the only way around that is moving a project or charging more, meaning for that needing reserves.
And I don't. Well,
We'll talk more next week. You got enough to think about. You've got a lot on your plate. We made you add a bunch of stuff to the reserve study that we pulled out, and yeah, that's more than enough. So, but we're all pretty much on the same page.
Yeah, I think we're all there where we want the most accurate numbers that we can get. I think that's what we're all working towards. And
but to get to what you're talking about, Colin, in terms of that expected residual, that's obviously the number you're talking about, right? The red at the end on page 68, for example.
The target reserves carryover.
Or the reserves carryover amount, just change that.
What do you mean? Like just zero it out or?
No, like just, can you put a formula in there that will move based on the amount that's left over? So it provides a range. So it's not just always 500,000. We'd like to see it go up to like 1.5 million or something.
Yeah, so we can let it grow. So if one year we are contributing more than we need for that project, rather than showing the next year where we could have a deduction, we want to actually let that grow. And so the next year's carryover is actually larger, and it shows that we either need less of a dues increase in future years, or maybe we can smooth it out completely. I know what you're saying, that we can all look at it optically and say, oh yeah, of course we wouldn't do this. We would just keep the dues flat and we would carry it over. But this goes out to the membership. It actually ends up in the ballot materials. And so what we're trying to get to is showing it as realistic to what we would actually propose in those years, even though we're only looking at 2020.
I mean, the thing that would really change that would be up at the top, the expected SERP reserve dues collection. So like if we didn't drop it like on page 5, then this collection amount in one of those years would naturally go up, which would then solve that problem at the end of the page.
Yeah. So you can work out the formula of that. We're just trying to get to, if we have the ability to, so keep this page saved because we might have to show it this way. But if we have the ability to show it in a more realistic way, how we would actually do it, rather than just, you know, this calculation of, we're kind of like just capturing each year at a time and not really thinking through multiple years, kind of cumulatively how you would plan. I would like, if we had another way to show it that was a little bit more realistic, then that would, by doing the, but I don't want to go in and just start moving things in the reserve study just because that's not what we want to do. We don't want to artificially, things that make sense to move, yes, but not artificially move them, like Penny said. But if we can, in the formulas, show it a little bit differently, that is smooths it a little bit better, that would be better, a better way to present it to the membership, because this does go to every single member in the voting materials, and we don't want to have the confusion that it caused last year. We want to be as realistic and upfront about this as possible.
We want to try to minimize the confusion.
Yes.
I'm not,
right,
know,
better words.
Yeah, you know, and you know, we'll get criticized for doing it whatever way we do it, but we're just trying to learn from how we've presented things in the past and see whether or not we can improve and find a better way to show and hopefully educate our members so that it's a, you know, so that it's a, you know, so that people can understand more of what we're trying to do, and that we're not trying to inflate things, that we're trying to make sure that we are accurately reflecting what the responsibility of the board and us as members have to do and have to show, and have a responsibility to understand what our liabilities are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Colin brought up a good point before, when we show those negative numbers, I'm concerned that people will read that and think, oh, then we, you know, dues are higher than they need to be, not understanding that what this is showing is the very low, you know, baseline. It's just enough to cover what we have. It's like, it's just barely enough. And what we actually want to do is build up that reserve. So then later on, when we see something 10 years down the road, we say, oh, we're saving for that. You know, we want to get to where we're there. We're not relying on special assessments or, you know, all of these things. We're actually planning ahead. We have a long range plan, and we're budgeting in that manner with a long range plan, so that we're not having these kind of emergency kind of situations. We want to get away from that.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be nice.
We're trying.
Are we done?
I'm done. You guys feeling done?
We're done.
All right. 8:42. I guess we need a motion to,
Motion to end. Motion to stop talking and
Actually, I'd say real quick that, gosh darn it, Tony, you're right. on that.
Oh my gosh, and we haven't recorded too, so.
Wow.
oh no, we should have
Yeah.
stopped recording.
The amount in total, like on the page, is right. Now I know exactly what it was. It was the addition of that Area Z maintenance building that we did at the very end. That's what's changing that calculation slightly. But meaning when you go to that page 5 and add up the surf and the shaded region, that total amount is correct. It's just the distribution between that 60 and that shaded region. So about $30-some of that should have shifted down to account for that Area Z thing coming down here into this table. But that's unfortunately, that's what happens when a trillion numbers are going on at once, then last minute changes get into it.
No problem.
that's what we're here to help you with, Joel.
It's happened to all of us. Don't worry.
Thrilled to finally know one thing that we've helped with.
So,
All right. Did we have a second? Again, thank you all for coming, for sticking through these long meetings, and staff. And
And thanks to staff for doing, and doing such wonderful work and being patient with us as we probe in.
Yeah. And thank you
Still
guys
need a
for all
second.
your good questions too. I appreciate you being diligent and looking through pages and pages of spreadsheets and asking good questions. I think that's helpful. So thanks.
So motion to end? Anybody second? All right, Colin, second.
All right. Thank you guys. I'll see you next week. Same time.
6 o'clock, right?
Bye. Yep. 6 o'clock. Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye.